Welcome, everyone, to the 2024 Democracy Awards. Please silence all your devices and take your seats as our program is about to begin. Welcome, everyone. Please silence all your devices and take your seats as our program is about to begin. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to the 2024 Democracy Awards. Please take your seats as our program is about to begin.
Whatever it takes, we strive for a better tomorrow. With fair elections, justice, rule of law, universal rights for all, independent media, freedom from tyranny, achieving lasting peace, to raise a voice and have a real choice, to be heard. Around the world, even in the most difficult circumstances, we see time and again that people want democracy.
Democracia.
Democracia.
O fulo.
Ordinary people are overcoming extraordinary odds, risking everything for human rights and freedom. This cause, the cause of our time, is why the National Endowment for Democracy exists. The National Endowment for Democracy was founded in 1983 with bipartisan congressional backing as an independent, non-governmental, non-profit grant-making foundation dedicated to strengthening democracy abroad. New ideas and calls for democracy support were taking hold, paving the way for an initiative to foster a global infrastructure of democracy, for people to freely determine their own destiny.
Freedom is not the sole prerogative of a lucky few, but the inalienable and universal right of all human beings.
NED holds a unique role as America's leading foundation for freedom. We respond to and support what citizens around the world are already championing for themselves.
You don't really know who you are until you're forced to fight for it.
Since our founding, we have stood alongside those who are on the forefront of democratic struggles everywhere. As a resource and hub for learning and intellectual exchange, NED shows up for those working for democracy. We stick around for the long term. As the challenges get tougher, we adapt, innovate, and work together in common cause to turn the tide on tyranny, to foster democratic renewal. This is the cause of our time.
Welcome to the stage, NED President and CEO, Damon Wilson.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I love the energy in this room. I love it a lot, but I'm still going to ask everyone to take a seat so we can kick off the evening. Welcome. It is such a pleasure to welcome you to the 2024 Democracy Awards of the National Endowment for Democracy. I want to thank all of you for joining us to honor individuals who have made extraordinary contributions to freedom, democracy, and human rights around the world. You'll hear from our chairman, Ken Wallach, a little bit later, our extraordinary chairman. But for now, I want to extend a warm welcome on behalf of the NED board members who serve as your hosts this evening. I also want to invite you to begin your meal. Welcome. So we know that today's challenges mean that we must work in common cause with others to go on offense to renew democracy. And that's why you are here tonight. First, I want to acknowledge the champions we will hear from this evening. Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya of Belarus, Aung Myo Min of Burma, Evgenia Kara-Murza of Russia, Zara Haidar of Sudan, Ledun Taitong Gyallo Sikyong Penpa Tsering of Tibet, Katerina Rashevska, and Valeria Sedova of Ukraine, Maria Corina Machado, Jorge Glem Salvera of Venezuela, and two very special honorees, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell and Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi. Thank you. Thank you. But as the endowment is a creature of the Congress, we're so delighted to welcome tonight Senator Jeanne Shaheen, along with Representatives Joaquin Castro, Stephen Cohen, Sarah Jacobs, and Joe Wilson. Thank you for joining tonight. I also want to welcome all the members of the administration, the diplomatic corps, former NED board members, and leaders of so many allied organizations that you see throughout the room, as well as members of the press. And of course, our generous sponsors tonight, Eileen Donahue and the Hereford Foundation, represented by Jane Kurtzman, as presenting sponsors. So 41 years ago, drawing on the pillars of American political life and the best of our democratic values, Democrats, Republicans, business and labor, they came together behind the simple idea that American private actors should stand by their counterparts working for democratic goals around the world. And today, that NED family is represented by my colleagues in the four core institutes of the endowment. Andrew Wilson from SIPE, associated with the U.S. Chamber, which is serving as our generous host this evening. Shauna Bader-Blau from the Solidarity Center, associated with the AFL-CIO. Dan Twining of IRI, and our newest colleague, Tamara Wittes from NDI. I also want to give a shout out to the incredibly dedicated NED staff that is here. It is such a privilege to work with you every day. And of course, we're joined by some remarkable former NED staff, including NED's founding president, the indomitable Carl Gershman. But the reason we are so inspired to do our work is because of the work of those on the forefront of the struggle for democracy. So look around the room, from our honorees to so many NED partners, Reagan Fassell Fellows, Penn Kimball Fellows, World Movement for Democracy Steering Committee members, and democratic leaders who should be leading their nations rather than being forced into exile. We are here tonight because of all of you. And we see every day, through you, the insatiable demand for democracy as people risk everything for the simple idea of having a say over their own future. Yes, this is a consequential year from freedom, when more than half of humanity heads to the polls. And this very fact is the basis for confidence in the future. Even autocrats have to concede that legitimacy somehow is based in the popular will of people. So our partners are pushing back on restrictive measures aimed at stacking the deck and delegitimizing their work. They're grappling with the impact of AI. And in the face of these evolving challenges, NED remains laser focused on our singular mission of supporting freedom, helping ordinary people doing extraordinary things, investing in the foundations of democracy over the long term. So tonight, as we honor heroes, we also gather in solidarity with partners and Core Institute staff detained this week in Yemen, with partners beaten as they protest to preserve democracy in Georgia, who have been forced to flee from Venezuela and Iran, driven into exile from Nicaragua and Zimbabwe, who have lost their lives in Burma, Gaza, Israel, and Ukraine, and countless others who are paying far too high a price for their fundamental rights. And in the NED family, these are not news items. These are our partners. And for many tonight, these are your family, these are your friends. So amidst a coordinated assault on democracy on the world, NED and our partners are adapting by sharpening our approach. We are helping our partners leverage opportunities. We are leaning into our role as venture capital for democracy, taking prudent risks, being flexible. We're working more closely as a NED family while also connecting our partners to each other to ensure a stronger democratic ecosystem. And as technology-enabled repression becomes more sophisticated, we're pushing ourselves to be the best partner of our partners in the hardest places. And we carry out this mission because it's the right thing to do. It represents the convergence of our values and our interests. Our modest support for democracy overseas is our nation's most cost-effective investment in a more peaceful, democratic, and prosperous world. The best response to these challenging times is to help others pursue their democratic aspirations peacefully. And this ethos is epitomized in our honorees this evening. They represent the unwavering spirit of democracy. So let's begin with our first honoree. Thank you.
After the war started and the crisis started, we face, as all Sudanese NGOs, a lot of challenge. My name is Zahra Haider. I'm a founder and now an executive director of Waey organization. Now currently we have people inside Sudan, we have team in Egypt, and we have team in Kampala. The main challenge, how to collect all this energy together and started to face this war. When the war started, they launched with other youth a campaign called Sinar Beytana, or Sunar Our House. This campaign from the first moment just opened the doors for receive IDPs from Khartoum, because the war started in the Khartoum. The second example is Al-Rakiza platforms in Niyala. Through the use of Al-Rakiza platforms, we provide a daily support for people in IDP camps in different areas of Sudan. We are working now to fighting hate speech, and this is a big project. We push the term of hate speech and fighting and combating hate speech to be present even in the Sudanese media, even of the politicians. They started to talk about hate speech. Before 3 months, nobody highlighted hate speech in Sudan.
I never knew we had so-called human rights or anything like that. When I learned that we have human rights and we have duties, I swear I was so overwhelmed with happiness.
Our hope is stopping the war and return to our countries. This first, all Sudanese hope to return to Sudan. The challenge is not just the war. The mindset that could recognize as the impact of this war, the violence mindset. How we face that, will be our biggest challenge, and I think we can face it. We really hope that this war will be the last war in the history of Sudan, and we will work hardly to achieve this dream.
Welcome to the stage, Representative Sarah Jacobs.
Well, hi, everybody. It is so great to be here with you all tonight. In March, I traveled to the Sudan-Chad border with Senator Cory Booker and Congresswoman Barbara Lee to meet with Sudanese refugees. We witnessed the heartbreaking crisis that's unfolding. In Sudan, 25 million people need urgent humanitarian aid. 10 million have been displaced, and at least 5 million are one step away from famine if they're not there already. I've been to many refugee camps before, but I have never seen kids so clearly traumatized as the kids I saw that day. Millions of Sudanese children haven't gone to school in a year, haven't gotten their vaccines, and don't have enough food or water. Many of them don't want to return to Sudan. And that's why the work the Waey organization is doing is so important, to build a better and brighter future for Sudan. Since the war began, they've countered the RSF and SAF's efforts to hinder aid and fuel tensions by providing humanitarian aid and supporting grassroots emergency responders. They're also empowering and training women and young people to take on effective, positive roles to promote peace and democracy. This is exactly the kind of work we need to ensure a more free, democratic, and prosperous Sudan. Because young people are the future of Sudan. In fact, 2/3 of the population is under the age of 30. If young people are more engaged and empowered, instead of being excluded from political processes, they're more likely to help build lasting peace and democracy in Sudan. And at this critical juncture, investing in young people now will create dividends far into the future, not only for Sudan, but for the entire African continent. So on behalf of the National Endowment for Democracy, it's my honor to present this year's 2024 Democracy Award to the Waey organization. And here to accept the award is co-founder and executive director, Zara Haider.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Congresswoman Sarah Jacob. Thanks a lot, National Endowment of Democracy. I also want to take this opportunity to thank all our partners who believe on us, who trust on my organization and continuing supporting us in this critical moment in the history of Sudan. I'm so happy and so proud to stand here to receive this award on behalf of the real hero, the youth, the young daughter and son of December 2019 Glory Revolution. Those who still working until this moment to provide and support and serve their community, and also bring hope to them, build the trust between them and the community. It's very strange that while the two parties of war bringing just this destruction, this youth is working hardly to bring life, hope, and dignity, serve the dignity and the life. We thank them, and on behalf of them, I again thank these youth. The very important thing that they are still working very hardly to achieve our dream as Sudanese, the state of freedom, peace, and justice, hurriya, salam, wa adala. So it's important to say that Waey is just a bridge of this dream and these hopes, but the bridge that is still active and working very hardly through an incredible team you can meet. And by the way, I have two fast messages from that team. The first message is to the people of the world. What you see from time to time about Sudan is not representing Sudan and is not representing Sudanese. The truth is, Sudanese are killed, displaced, terrible things happening to them by external weapon and support. So we ask you all to stand in solidarity with Sudan and make a pressure for the two parties of war and also for the external supporter of the war in Sudan to stop doing that. This is the first message. The second message is for my people, the great people, the Sudanese. We want to say to them, we will not return to Sudan. Our Sudan will not stand again via the gate of violence, hatred, and anger. Despite our differences, despite our disagreement, our beloved Sudan will rise higher again among the nation, just with our love and unity. So it's very important in this moment to stick in this unity and work together to achieve the peace. Yes, we can, because we do it before in December Revolution. We made the impossible, and again we can make the impossible and bring peace to Sudan. Thank you all.
Welcome to the stage, Minister of Human Rights for the National Unity Government of Burma, Aung Myo Min.
Thank you. My name is Aung Myo Min, Minister of Human Rights of the National Unity Government. My country has been constrained for the cause of democracy and human rights. Now is more than ever. Leader McConnell has been our inspiration, and then steward and friends of Myanmar. The country is now in the dictatorship, but you know that people are still working on that. In the cause of democracy, we've been working together, and then now it's more than ever. His parallel political leadership and commitment for democracy for the cause of the Myanmar is being essential and also very important. in the time of hope, in the time of repression. Over the many years, Leader McConnell and his staff, particularly Mr. Bogrove, has given our movement and many other democratic forces around the world a voice in the hall of United States Congress. His commitment to the political partisans and democracy assistance, including to the National Endowment for Democracy, is very crucial for all of us who've been at the forefront for the struggle for democracy. This is with great gratitude to present the Democracy Support Award on behalf of the National Endowment for Democracy to the leader, Mr. McConnell, for his strong leadership for democracy and also for his commitment for democracy around the world. Thank you and welcome.
Throughout his distinguished career in the U.S. Senate, Republican leader Mitch McConnell has been a steadfast champion for freedom, human rights, and democracy around the world. From the beginning of his Senate career, Leader McConnell has stood as a leading voice for democratic advancement in every corner of the globe to support the good guys and stand by the oppressed. He has championed democracy advocates from South Africa to Hong Kong, Ukraine, and Burma. In Burma, Leader McConnell has rallied support for democracy movements, sponsored legislation to sanction the military junta, and providing support for civil society. Leader McConnell has also been an essential supporter of Ukraine as it stands up to Russian aggression. His leadership and decades-long commitment for the fight for freedom has kept the issue front and center in U.S. policy.
Get rid of the old speech. Well, thank you very much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this recognition after all these years. As you can imagine, I'm frequently asked, and my former colleague Tom Daschle may have had the same experience while he was leader. What's it like to be leader of your party in the Senate? And Tom, I gave a lot of thought to the perfect answer, and I think it's a little bit like being the groundskeeper at a cemetery. Everybody's under you, but no one is listening. Well, I can't thank you enough, Minister, for that kind introduction and for your work on behalf of the people of Burma. Thank you to Damon Wilson for your stewardship of this important organization, and to all of you here who have devoted to the mission. My earliest exposure to the power of American leadership and democracy was the Senate's vote to override the veto of the sanctions against the apartheid regime in South Africa. The veto, of course, came from a president of my own party, a president I actually revered greatly. Voting for the override was hardly a way for a backbencher in those days to make friends. But here I am. And it's hard to think of a more compelling primer on the power of American leadership than what came next. A chance to join the State and Foreign Operations Subcommittee of Appropriations. Had a chance to begin to move around the world a little bit to see whether we'd made a difference, to develop a bipartisan relationship with Pat Leahy. He and I did that either as ranking or chairman for a decade, to see wonderful people who worked with me, Robin Cleveland, who's here tonight, Paul Grove, Tom Hawkins. They helped drive real changes to our foreign assistance and democracy promotion efforts. It was a powerful platform for advancing the cause of freedom in Burma, which had caught my attention early in my career, and it brought me back face to face with the NED's essential work. As chair and ranking member, Senator Leahy and I worked together to make sure America's democracy promotion tools were robustly funded and subject to diligent oversight. The bipartisan commitment continues today under Senator Coons and Senator Lindsey Graham. Our work certified my sense that promoting democracy is actually a long game. It requires an awful lot of patience. Inevitably, it involves frustrating setbacks, but ultimately, it's worth it. Take Burma. Brave people have been struggling for self-determination for decades. I had a chance to slip notes back and forth to Aung San Suu Kyi during the 21 years she was under house arrest. It wasn't possible to get a letter in directly. And then she had this brief opportunity of freedom. And while she was in the United States, I think her first visit here, I asked her to come to Kentucky. And she did. And we took her to horse farms in central Kentucky, spent a day and a half with her, and she kindly spoke to my university. And interestingly enough, there were a number of Burmese refugees in Louisville, and she repeated parts of her speech in the native language. Well, we all know that brief opportunity to be out of house arrest has been replaced by something even worse. But I don't think we should give up. You never know when opportunities will come to turn this around. And if the people of Burma were willing to risk their lives in this effort, then I wanted to make sure that Washington didn't forget them. Of course, the enemies of self-determination in Burma are relentless. The military junta continues to reject democratic elections, brutally suppresses the opposition, and unlawfully detains thousands of brave freedom figures. So, for myself, I'm going to keep pushing to give the State Department and USAID new tools and resources to help the people of Burma resist the junta. But this task also requires greater and more vocal leadership from the administration to overcome bureaucratic inertia. This is true everywhere that people are risking their lives to right futures of Western democracy. And America needs to be there too, and we've had some discussion within my party about whether or not America should continue to play this role. The answer is America should continue to play this role. The world is a better place with America in the leadership role. So NED's mission is as relevant to today's great power competition as it was to the Cold War. Taiwan is resisting greater intimidation and coercion from the same repressive authoritarian regime that extinguished the lights of freedom in Hong Kong. Israel is fighting a network of terrorists bent on slaughter. Ukraine is trying to prove that dictators can't redraw maps by force. These struggles are real. They are ongoing, and they require our continued attention and support. So I'm deeply grateful for this recognition, but tonight is not a culmination, not for any of us. For the remainder of my term in the Senate, it'll be every bit as focused on advancing the principles of American leadership. And I look forward to standing with each of you in that effort. Thank you.
Welcome to the stage, Senator Jeanne Shaheen.
Good evening, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here with all of you to celebrate the great work of the National Endowment for Democracy. I'm here tonight to honor a freedom fighter, a trailblazer, a mother, the leader of the Belarus democracy movement, and my dear friend, President-elect Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya. It is such a privilege for me to present this award to someone who shares the aspirations of those standing up for democracy, from Georgia to Ukraine to Belarus, someone who helps keep the flame of hope alive for millions living under authoritarian regimes. From the moment we met in 2021 in Lithuania, where she's forced to lead this movement in exile, it was clear that this daunting job she had undertaken to lead the Belarusian pro-democracy movement was not the job she had initially envisioned for herself. The personal sacrifices that Sviatlana has made are enormous. But when her husband Sergei was arrested and imprisoned for standing up to Lukashenko, Sviatlana stepped up. She does it because she has a deep and abiding commitment to fight for democracy on behalf of all the people of Belarus. Unlike the power-hungry Lukashenko, Sviatlana is driven by a calling to unite us, not divide us. And she's driven by the belief that democracy and human rights are for everyone. Under Sviatlana's leadership, the pro-democracy movement has made tremendous strides, such as securing a historic strategic dialogue between the Belarusian democracy movement and the United States. And Sviatlana has sustained the profile of the democracy movement by keeping a robust travel schedule to keep the people of Belarus on the minds of politicians and policymakers, especially now amid Putin's war in Ukraine. I'm proud to support Sviatlana's efforts as she and the pro-democracy movement advocate for free press, for the release of all Belarusian political prisoners, and for basic human dignity. Senator Wicker of Mississippi and I created the bipartisan Belarus Democracy Caucus, and we introduced legislation that, among other measures, recognizes Sviatlana as the democratically elected leader of Belarus. But our efforts pale in comparison to Sviatlana's heroism and her dedication to the cause. Sviatlana, I look forward to meeting you and your husband Sergei one day in a free and democratic Belarus. But until that day comes, I am proud to present this year's Democracy Service Award to Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya.
Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya is the leader of democratic Belarus. After her husband Sergei Tikhanovsky was imprisoned on false charges, Tikhanovskaya courageously challenged the dictatorship of Alexander Lukashenko in the 2020 presidential election. Despite coercion and harassment from the regime, independent observers agree that she won the election. She has continued her work from exile, gathering international support for a free Belarus, advocating for the release of the country's close to 1,400 political prisoners, and campaigning against Russia's war in Ukraine and Belarus's forced involvement in it. Her unimpeachable leadership and personal sacrifice to defend democracy over authoritarianism is an example for champions of democracy everywhere.
Thank you, dear Senator Shaheen, for your kind words and for your dedicated and long-lasting support for democratic Belarus. Dear Damon, Leader McConnell, Speaker Emerita Pelosi, if you are here, Undersecretary Bass, dear Evgenia Kara-Murza, Ukrainian friends, and all the laureates. It's a great privilege to receive the NED Democracy Medal. But this award is not for me, but for millions of Belarusians who are paying the biggest price for freedom and democracy. I dedicate this prize to all those whose freedom is denied. You know, my dear friends, I have noticed that the fight for democracy is often romanticized. You might remember the inspiring pictures of mass protests in Belarus when hundreds of thousands took to the streets. We remember those fearless women wearing white dresses with bunches of flowers leading the protest. However, there is a darker picture of this fight, because the road to democracy is paved with pain, tears, and sufferings. The fight for democracy is knowing that at this very moment, a friend of yours is being tortured by the KGB, and that another friend is facing death penalty. The fight for democracy is having to explain to your kids that their daddy has been sentenced to 19 years in prison because he wants better life for his children. The fight for democracy is when you suffer a terrible pain with stage 4 cancer and you are denied any treatment because you are in prison. And for so long, you haven't heard a word from your family because you have been held incommunicado. And the lawyer who defended you has himself been sentenced to 5 years. The fight for democracy is when you unexpectedly win an election and find yourself discussing policy with President Biden whilst worrying if your husband is still alive. The fight for democracy is when your only son goes to fight in Ukraine, knowing that without Ukraine's victory, Belarus cannot be free, because the fate of 2 our countries are intertwined. Your son dies on the battlefields, and you, his mother, join his comrades on the front line. The fight for democracy is at 77. You take to the streets every day with your national flag. You provoke the police and the inevitable arrest. You get arrested, released, sew a new flag overnight, and go out again. The fight for democracy is whilst protesting Russification, you teach your children to speak Belarusian, because it's your culture, your identity, and this is the fuel of your resistance. The fight for democracy means, as a businessman, transferring funds to support the oppressed. When your company is shut down by the regime, you relocate to another country, start your business from scratch, and continue helping those in need. The fight for democracy means working as a journalist for Radio Free Europe, like Igor Losik or Andrei Kuznechik, broadcasting protests and telling the truth until one day the KGB knocks on your door. So these are real stories of real people, and this is real fight for democracy. It is difficult, but it cannot won alone. The fight for democracy needs allies, and many of these allies are in this room here tonight, like Damon Wilson, who supported, and the whole actually NED team providing assistance to freedom fighters all over the world. Allies like Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who scares dictators around the world. Or like Senator Shaheen or Mitch McConnell, representing the values that America holds so dearly. Like courageous freedom fighters from Tibet, Sudan, and individuals like Evgenia Kara-Murza. Dear Evgenia, I know how you feel, I know your pain, and I pray that both our husbands return home. We need allies like people of Ukraine, who fight fearlessly for their country and for the values that we cherish so much. And I'm happy to see Ambassador Markarova here today with us. Victory for Ukraine will be... Victory of Ukraine will be defeat of Putin and Lukashenko. So, thank you. So, dear friends, the path to freedom and democracy can be long and difficult, but let's walk this path together, side by side. Thank you. Живи Беларусь!
Each child is a small, unique world, unfortunately destroyed by the Russian aggression. My name is Katerina Rashevska. I'm a legal expert at the Regional Center for Human Rights. We started as organization providing free legal aid, but of course after the beginning of the occupation we started documenting war crimes and crimes against humanity. The Russian Federation has deported at least 19,546 Ukrainian children to 57 regions of the Russian Federation.
We were told we're going to a camp in Yevpatoria, but nobody knew where because nobody told us its name. The conditions were really bad. It wasn't a place meant for children.
Now they are trying to turn Ukrainian children into enemies of their proper nation. According to the Genocide Convention and according to the Rome Statute, forcible transfer of children from one group to another group, this is a genocide. On October 25, 2022, we submitted our communication to the ICC. And of course, in these circumstances, the International Criminal Court was so decisive to issue arrest warrants not only against Maria Lvova-Belova, but against Vladimir Putin.
The International Criminal Court has issued 2 warrants of arrest in the Ukraine situation.
It's unprecedented. For us, a return of Ukrainian children is a high priority. Unfortunately, time is playing against Ukrainian children. Ukrainian children who reached the age of majority received summons to Russian army. More than anything, Ukrainian children need peace. And that is why I call to the international community to help Ukraine and Ukrainian non-governmental organizations to repatriate each child deported or forcibly transferred by Russians.
Welcome to the stage, Representative Joe Wilson.
And ladies and gentlemen and friends of democracy, what an humbling experience to be here with you. I particularly am grateful to follow, of all things, Senator Mitch McConnell. His middle name is Addison. My first name is Addison. So I've always claimed him as a cousin. And with that, obviously. And then to be after Sviatlana, I've had the opportunity to meet with her a number of times, and I'm so grateful for the country of Lithuania providing such a backup to the people of Belarus. And with Senator Jean Shaheen, with Senator Roger Wicker, I look forward as the co-chair of the Friends of Belarus caucus of the House to one day being in Minsk, where we'll be together in a free and democratic Belarus. And then, and it's special for me to be here tonight because it was 34 years ago that with the International Republican Institute, I was an election observer in Bulgaria. I was visiting, or being there, the most slavish Soviet satellite. Now, a strong member of the European Union, a member of NATO, a great ally of freedom and democracy and promoting truly the people of Ukraine. And then last week, I had the opportunity to be at Normandy, and I saw again where democracies could come together and defeat the dictatorships of Rome and Berlin. And so I'm an optimist that the future will be bright as we work for democracy. But sadly, the world is in a war we did not choose, between dictators with rule of gun and invading democracies with rule of law. War criminal Putin is waging an illegal war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. Many brave Ukrainian people have paid the ultimate price to keep their freedom. Just one example of war crimes that Putin has committed is the planned kidnapping of tens of thousands of Ukrainian children who are sent to re-education camps in Russia and Belarus and often given adoption to Russian families, all with the goal to erase the Ukrainian identity. This act qualifies as genocide under international law. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for war criminal Putin and Children's Commissioner Maria Lvova-Belova with the kidnapping of Ukrainian children. It is largely due to the work of the Regional Center for Human Rights that these warrants were issued. The center was established in 2013 in Sevastopol by Crimean attorneys who moved from Crimea following its occupation to continue working towards justice and accountability for the egregious human rights violations and spotlighting the illegal transfer of the population from Crimea to the Russian Federation back in 2015. The United States Congress is committed to ensuring the safe return of these kidnapped children and to holding the perpetrators accountable. On behalf of the National Endowment for Democracy, I'm grateful to present this 2024 Democracy Award for Regional Center for Human Rights. Here to accept the award is legal expert Katerina Rashevka and Valeria Sedova. You get the center seat.
Distinguished audience, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to be the person who receives this award today on behalf of the Regional Center for Human Rights and to express our gratitude. For a human like myself, a small voice for those who have no voice, who struggle so that the cry of the children may be heard in all its power, this is without any doubt the highest honor that I can receive. I know that this award is a recognition not of the RCHR work alone, but of the work of many other organizations and people who have striven to bring hope for those who are looking for their deported children and who are trying to cope with trauma provoked by the Russian aggression. Millions of Ukrainian children are affected by brutal, unprovoked Russian war against Ukraine since 2014. They have been killed, raped, seriously injured, forced to witness or even experience terrifying acts of violence. The consequences for Ukrainian children are at a scale and a speed not seen in Europe since World War II. The Russian Federation has deported more than 20,000 Ukrainian children. And now it imposed its citizenship on them. It transferred them to Russian families for foster care or for adoption, and is trying to eradicate their national identity. Such a policy of the aggressor state proves that it has no intention to return Ukrainian children, and all existing initiatives are just an attempt to avoid the responsibility, including in the International Criminal Court. Currently, the process of repatriation is organized through Qatar, but it seems not to be very effective, as evidenced by the low number of already returned children, only 388 to date. The Regional Center for Human Rights has taken many steps to help Ukrainian children. We have submitted 3 communications to the International Criminal Court, resulting with the issuance of 2 arrest warrants against Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova. We have elaborated the concept of the unified legal repatriation mechanism and contributed significantly to the establishment and activity of the International Coalition for Returning Ukrainian Children and Bring It Back Waey task force. We work tirelessly to identify abducted children and to include guilty persons to sanction lists. We advocate for the protection of Ukrainian children in the United States, in Europe, in Canada, but we are also constantly seeking for partnerships with countries of Asia, Latin America, and Africa, because now it's not the time to compare suffering of children. Now it's time to make this world fair and safe for each child. Now it's not the time to tell the world leaders to realize how important the reunification of family is. They already know it. Their children are with them, not with their enemies. Now it's time to tell the world leaders how to help Ukrainian children. They need psychological rehabilitation, medical assistance, educational services. But more than anything else, Ukrainian children need peace. That is why, among key priorities for the Global Peace Summit, we have the repatriation of Ukrainian children. When we look at the world today through the eyes of Ukrainian children, we see a terrifying picture. Too many dreams have been shattered, and too many hopes have been extinguished. It must stop. My greatest hope is that this will be the last time. This will be the last time when we should fight for the return of abducted children to Ukraine or wherever. We must solve it once and for all. Thank you. And now it is my privilege to take the floor to our special guest for today. This is the bravest girl, one of the bravest young women of Ukraine, who after enduring so much trauma and pain after deportation by the Russian agents, today still stands up for and helps others. She will tell her story not because it is unique, but because it is not. Please welcome Valeria Sedova.
Вітаю, я Валерія, і мені 17 років. Я з українського міста Нова Каховка, що на Херсонщині, біля березі Дніпра. 4 роки тому моя мама померла, і я залишилась жити з бабусею. Займалась танцями, повітряною гімнастикою і була звичайним підлітком.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Valeria. I'm 17 years old. I'm from Ukrainian city Nova Kakhovka, which is located on the bank of Dnieper River. 4 years ago, my mother has passed away, and I stayed with my grandmother. I used to dance, aerial gymnastics, and loved walking around the city. I was an ordinary teenager.
Уранці 24 лютого 2022 року ми прокинулись і побачили у місті колони військової техніки з літрами Z. Танки, КАМАЗи, озброєні військові. Але тоді ми ще не знали, що це вторгнення росіян. Але вже в обід над Каховською ГЕС росіяни вивісили свій триколор. Коли я зрозуміла, що тепер ми живемо у ворожій окупації, у мене з'явився сильний шум у вухах, і він не проходив понад місяць.
On the morning of February 24, 2022, we woke up and saw columns and military equipment marked with the letter Z. Tanks, trucks, armed soldiers. We did not yet know that this was the Russian invasion, that this was war. By noon, the Russian flag was raised over the Kakhovka hydroelectric station. That is when I realized that we were now living under enemy occupation. The stress caused a ringing in my ears that lasted a month.
Пізніше окупанти оголосили так звану евакуацію. Вони склали списки усіх дітей міста Нова Каховка і оголосили, що завтра о 10 ранку виїзд починається з головної площі міста. І от, 8 жовтня 2022 року понад 500 дітей зібрались на головній площі міста. Серед них була і я. Мені тоді було 15 років. Нас загрузили в 14 автобусів, і в кожному автобусі був озброєний військовий. Супроводжувала нас також військова поліція. Нам обіцяли, що ми проведемо в цьому таборі 2 тижні, але я пробула в ньому 2 місяці.
Later, the occupiers announced a so-called evacuation. They compiled the list of all children in the city and declared that everyone must show up the main square at 10 in the morning. And on October 8, 2022, over 500 children gathered in the main square of our city, including me. I was 15 years old. We were loaded onto 14 buses and taken towards Crimea. Each bus had an armed Russian soldier. We were also accompanied by military police. We were told that we would stay in Crimea for no more than 2 weeks. I ended up spending 2 months there.
В таборі Лучистий, що в Євпаторії, в нас був такий розклад дня. Вранці ми вставали, йшли на сніданок і піднімали російський гімн. Потім його слухали. А після того в нас була російська школа, де до нас приходили псевдовикладачі і розповідали нам перекручені факти історії. Наприклад, що Чорнобильська трагедія – це вигадка, а штучний геноцид в 1933 році, Голодомор, також вигадка. Також вони розповідали, що росіяни – найсильніша нація світу, адже вони перебороли Наполеона. До нас також стабільно приїжджали люди з Криму, з Росії, з агітацією вступити до російських університетів. Обіцяли, що якщо ми вмовимо батьків, у нас буде дуже багато можливостей, нам будуть платити гроші, в нас буде квартира. Але обов'язковою умовою до цього всього був російський паспорт, адже навіть лікування без нього отримати було не можна.
At the Luchinsky camp in Yevpatoria city, we had following schedule. We began in the morning by listening to the Russian autumn. Then was a school program where Russian teachers taught up pseudo-history. They constantly destroyed the facts, claiming their Chernobyl tragedy was a fabrication, denying the man-made genocide of the Holodomor in 1933, and asserting that Russia is the stronger nation in the world because it defended Napoleon. Constantly, they were visitors urging us to enroll in Russian universities. They declared promises of apartment, regular cash payments, and free education if only we convince our parents relocate to Russia. But there was a catch. We had to receive a Russian passport first. Similarly, it was impossible to receive medical treatment without one.
Ми не мали змоги вивчати українську мову, і російську прописували нам як рідну. Повністю переслідували будь-яке поєднання з українською мовою та забороняли. Нас повністю асоціювали як дітей Російської Федерації. Вони просто стерли той факт, що ми все своє життя живемо в Україні, та що ми громадянини цієї країни. І навіть зараз, в Криму, ми знаходимося на території України, хоч і окупованій.
We didn't have the opportunity to study Ukrainian language. We were taught the Russian and forced to declare is our native language. I witnessed how Ukrainian language was banned and those who spoke were persecuted. We were labeled as the children of Russian Federation. They simply embraced the fact that we are Ukrainians, citizens of Ukraine, and have lived in Ukraine all our lives, albeit now in the occupied region.
А найстрашніше було спостерігати за маленькими дітьми 5 років. Вже було холодно, вони ходили замурзані, з бронхітами, з педикульозом, а ліків в таборі не було. І можливості лікуватись поза табором також не було. Нікого абсолютно не хвилював стан здоров'я дитини, але дуже хвилювала відвідуваність на уроках. І якщо ти не прийшов на урок, тебе карали. Я пробула в таборі 2 місяці, а потім мої опікунці дозволили мене забрати назад на окуповану територію.
The most horrifying thing for me was seeing the 5-year-old kids. As it was getting colder, they were neglected, dirty, and often sick. They suffered from bronchitis and head lice. There was hardly any medicine in camp. Nobody cared about children's health. Only class attendance mattered. Missing any class was not allowed, and we were punished if we did. I stayed in the camp for 2 months. My guardian was allowed to take me under the condition that we would return to the occupied territory.
Табір показав мені, що Росія – це країна-тюрма. Вона спочатку приходить, потім забирає, убиває і каже, що ми це зробили самі. Я не бачила свого майбутнього в країні окупанті, і тому я вирішила повернутися назад на підконтрольну Україну. Я їхала рандомними перевізниками через Ростов, Маріуполь, Белгород, а потім нарешті побачила українського солдата і заплакала.
The camp showed me that Russia is the prison country. It's a murderous country that comes, takes everything, kills, rapes, and then says, you did it to yourself. I didn't see my future there. Risking my life, I decided to return to Ukraine. I traveled alone with the random drivers for the whole day through the Mariupol, Rostov, Belgorod. Then for 2 hours, I walked into my back through the minefield, which was the only humanitarian corridor available. When I finally saw a Ukrainian soldier, I burst in tears.
Насправді, мені було дуже страшно добиратися самій. Але коли я повернулась в Україну, мене підтримали такі організації, як Офіс омбудсмана, благодійний фонд «Голоси дітей» і цей настільки важливий фонд, котрий сьогодні отримав премію, це Регіональний центр прав захисту людини. Я знаю, що ці 3 організації роблять максимум для того, щоб спочатку повернути дитину, а потім повернути їй майбутнє, котре вкрала Росія. І тепер я тут, стою перед вами і говорю і мислю не на свій вік, не тому, що багато читаю книжок і не від кращого життя, а тому, що мені прийшлось подорослішати, тому що Росія вкрала в мене 1,5 року мого дитинства. Тепер я насправді ніде не почуваю себе в безпеці. Підтримуйте Збройні Сили України, підтримуйте свободу та гідність. Підтримуйте нас. Дякую.
I was scared to travel by myself. When I was in free Ukraine, I received support from humanitarian organizations. This included an ombudsman office, the charitable foundation Voice of Children, and the important organization receiving the Democracy Award today, the Regional Center of Human Rights. I know that these 3 organizations are doing their utmost to rescue Ukrainian children from occupation and restore their childhood. And here I am now. I'm looking and I'm thinking beyond my age, not because I have better life or read large number of books, but because of Russian stole 1.5 years of my childhood. I had to mature early. Russian soldiers now live in my house in Novokakhovka. At the age of 17, I have developed chronic stress disorder. I no longer feel safe anywhere. Support Ukraine, support our armed forces, support freedom and human dignity. Thank you.
Слава Україні!
Please relax and enjoy dinner. Our program will resume in 20 minutes. Please return your attention to the stage as we welcome Chair of the NED Board of Directors, Kenneth Wallach.
I've been given the unenviable task of quieting the audience down, so please eat quietly and help me out here. Tonight, we want to pay a special tribute to the people of Venezuela. The people of Venezuela who, with courage and commitment, will cast their ballots on July 28th. They will overcome fear and repression, economic hardship, and unfair electoral conditions to demand a democratic future for their country. We will hear more through music at the end of our program this evening. But now we are fortunate to hear a message from someone at the forefront of this fight, the democratically elected Democratic opposition leader of Venezuela, Maria Corina Machado.
Greetings from Caracas to everyone present at the NED's Democracy Award event, especially to Eamon Wilson, Ken Wallach, and Miriam Comley. I feel very proud and grateful to you for giving this award to my fellow citizens for a struggle for democracy and freedom in Venezuela. It reaffirms your support to the Venezuelan cause. We are living historic days. We are seeing a unique, unprecedented social movement growing day after day, defeating fear, getting all people back together around the values we share. We want to live with dignity, with freedom, and with our families together. We want our kids back home. That's why we all need your support at this time. Venezuela is not only the biggest threat to political stability in the region, but it is as well the biggest opportunity to move ahead, strengthening democratic institutions in our hemisphere. In a few days, we will have an historic presidential election. We are fighting hard to defend the will of our people. We need you because we know we will prevail.
On behalf of the Endowment's Board of Directors, I too want to thank you for joining us this evening. Over the years, we have been honored to recognize the special contributions of men and women here and abroad who personify the commitment to freedom, democracy, and human rights that are at the heart of our work. There are times when our award recipients represent the celebratory side of the democracy story. But tonight we are reminded of a different side of the story, the hard reality that the democratic struggle continues in far too many places. Our partners worldwide are united in a shared mission, the pursuit of a more peaceful, prosperous, and humane world. Our work is grounded in deep and abiding relationships with them. As Madeleine Albright often said, we are optimists, but optimists who worry a lot. And it was Madeleine's good friend Václav Havel who once explained the difference between hope and optimism. Hope, he said, is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it turns out. In this regard, we are in the hope and optimism business. Now, there are those here at home who may argue that the shortcomings of our own democracy make us ill-suited to advance this cause overseas. And dictators have predictably pointed to our flaws to stoke anti-American sentiment and to further arrogate power to themselves. But the late Fred Hyatt of the Washington Post reminded us 20 years ago that if you were to ask the dissidents and human rights champions in isolated prison cells and frozen work camps. If you could ask the elected leader of Burma who is still under house arrest, or the peasants who are being chased from their villages in Western Sudan, or the Democrats being squashed in Hong Kong by the communists in Beijing, if you could ask any of them, you might get a different answer. They might tell you that the United States has never been perfect, has never done enough, has never been free of hypocrisy, but also that if America cannot take up their cause, no one will, end quote. The United States Congress is a very special institution for these Democrats. It has often provided them with their first recognition and sustained international support for their struggle. And it was 41 years ago that the Congress had laid the legislative foundation for the NED and our 4 affiliated institutes. The congressional leaders who we honor tonight, Leader McConnell and Speaker Pelosi, have helped ensure continued bipartisan support for our mission and our work. We are indebted to them, as are our partners in every region of the world. I am proud to serve with a board of directors that is deeply committed to this institution and to its mission. We are fortunate to benefit from a dedicated staff under the gifted leadership of Damon Wilson. I would like to recognize NED board members who are with us tonight, along with ex officio members, and ask them to please stand. Joaquin Castro, Steve Began, Dan Freed, Peter Roscom, Rachel Kleinfeld, Scott Carpenter, David Skaggs, Juan Zarate, Kelly Curry, Stuart Applebaum, Mark Plattner, Elisa Ayers, and Jane Kurtzman. And I would ask former board members to stand with them and be recognized as well. That includes you, Barry Jackson, wherever you are. I want to acknowledge 2 chairmen of the NED affiliated institutes who are here tonight. Senator Tom Daschle, chairman of the National Democratic Institute, my home for over 30 years, and Greg Lebedev, chairman of the Center for International Private Enterprise. Finally, I want to mention 2 special initiatives that deserve your attention and support. Not surprisingly, as authoritarian regimes have surged in recent years, so has the community of democracy activists that have been forced into exile. They receive critical assistance from the Gershman Fund for Democracy Activists at Risk. Named after NED's founding president, Carl Gershman, the fund provides emergency support from relocation costs to legal and medical aid, often in partnership with universities and other institutions at home and abroad. Our support enables them to continue to carry out their advocacy work in their home countries. Carl, this is also a tribute to your legacy at the endowment. I would ask you to join this effort by using the QR code inside the back cover of your program. Your contribution is deeply appreciated. The second initiative is the 12th Global Assembly of the World Movement for Democracy, to be held in South Africa this November. Every 2 years, the Assembly brings together hundreds of democratic leaders and activists from around the world who share ideas, experiences, and expertise. It is an extraordinary network led by Nobel laureate Maria Ressa. I hope there are those in this room who will support this gathering and join us in Johannesburg. Thank you very much.
It wasn't clear, the picture of just how bad it is, like 1 million Tibetan children in colonial boarding schools in Tibet. My name is Laden Tetong. I'm the director and co-founder of Tibet Action Institute. Tibet Action Institute is committed to training Tibetans in the use of digital security tools and best practices in the Tibet movement to fight for rights and freedom inside Tibet. We decided that this really was critical moving forward, that Tibetans inside could do and would do so much if they just had the tools. And so that's really what we founded Tibet Action, to do that and to try to bring up the level of the nonviolent battle that Tibetans have been waging for freedom for 7 decades.
A report out from the Tibet Action Institute that says the Chinese government has been using policies to force Tibetan children.
China's constructed a massive colonial boarding school system in occupied Tibet. They have nearly all Tibetan students between the ages of 4 and 18 in residential schools, being removed from your parents and families and culture and language, with a very harsh identity erasing curriculum and life.
I missed my family, but I couldn't cry and I couldn't talk to other students and teachers because I didn't know Chinese then. There were many other children who missed their families and cried too. Some of the younger ones often woke up in the middle of the night crying, and they would run to the school gate.
Tibet Action Institute, our report was really we were sort of the first to sound the alarm on this system. By releasing this report and gaining sort of global attention on the issue of the colonial boarding schools in Tibet, we've been able to break through the enforced silence and really put an end to this campaign to sort of erase Tibet. This is really critical that we sort of keep the pressure on, keep the spotlight on, and find new and creative ways to challenge them both in and outside of Tibet. This is all about rights and freedom. We will be a nation and we will regain our rights, our freedom. It's only impossible till it's not.
Welcome to the stage, Representative Peter Rostrom.
Have you noticed something about our culture? We are an easily distracted people. The proof of this is an anecdote from this morning. I met a colleague for breakfast who arrived 5 minutes before I did, and when I walked in, he had his laptop open, he was scrolling the internet, he was sending emails, and he was on the phone, and as I came in, he gave me that word. Now that's funny, and I teased him, and I gave him a hard time, but when that happens on a global basis, and we lose the attention that we need to pay to serious issues because of distraction, that's no joke. One of the things that the Tibet Action Institute did was put the idea of Tibetan sovereignty back on the map. Because here's the challenge. It was fading away somewhat. And through their report, through the report that said that the Chinese government was forcing Tibetan children into a system of boarding schools, not out of benevolence, not out of a notion of, hey, how can we help you, but through cultural malevolence, through a desire to erase Tibetan culture and put it aside. That was the agenda, and that's a shameful thing. And the Tibet Action Institute was able to capture that information, raise a report, put it out into the public, and refocus the public's attention on this vital issue. And in listening to the programs tonight, it struck me that there's one thing worse than suffering, and the worst thing than suffering is suffering in anonymity when nobody knows what's going on. So, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great joy on behalf of the National Endowment for Democracy to present this 2024 Democracy Award to the Tibet Action Institute. So please welcome Pladun Tetong and Dr. Gal Lo.
Thank you, NED. This is not only a great recognition of our work, but also the great encouragement in fighting for democracy, human rights, and freedom for the future generations of Tibet.
I will speak on behalf of Dr. Gello and our entire Tibet Action team. I also want to say thank you to the distinguished board and staff of NED. It is incredibly meaningful for us to be here tonight alongside the democratically elected leader of the Tibetan people, Sikyong Penpa Tsering. We accept this award as a recognition of the heroic resistance that generation after generation of Tibetans has waged under the leadership of His Holiness, the great 14th Dalai Lama, against China's illegal occupation of our homeland. The story of China and Tibet is not actually a story of subjugation and defeat, but rather it's a David versus Goliath epic that's gone on for 70 years, and as of yet, remains unfinished. No matter the odds, Tibetans resist. We see this in the uprisings of 1956, 1958, 59, of massive protests through 1969, 87, 88, 89, and even 2008, when the stakes were highest for Beijing in the lead up to the Olympic Games. Even after the military clampdown following the 2008 uprising, with PLA troops posted in cities, towns, and villages across Tibet, a young monk named Tape lit his body on fire and set off a wave of these painful actions, with more than 160 Tibetans engaging in this unprecedented protest movement. The reason Tibetan resistance has continued unbroken until now is because Tibetans are a proud people with a great civilization and several thousand years of history, and because the PRC assault on our people has continued unabated. Even when China was doing business with the rest of the world, seemingly getting along, cooperating, and being a somewhat responsible member of the international community, Tibetans knew they were hiding their strength, biding their time, and building their wealth and their power. We knew this because Tibet has always been the canary in the coal mine for China. China's treatment of Tibet has always been a sign or a warning for the rest of the world of the dangers ahead. In its invasion in 1949-50, the rewriting of history, redrawing of maps, we see the earliest signs of the threat the PRC would one day pose to peace and security in our world. In the imposition of martial law in March of 1989, we see foreshadowing of the Tiananmen Square massacre. And in the brutal crackdown on the 2008 uprising and the subsequent sealing off of the entire Tibetan plateau, we saw the signals that even in the 21st century, life in China too could be restricted and controlled to the point of being effectively closed to the rest of the world. Something nearly unthinkable until it wasn't. And now today, we're here because the PRC continues its onslaught in Tibet. When we say at least 1 million children are now separated from their parents and made to live in the genocidal boarding school system, we're speaking of 80% of all Tibetan school-age children from as young as age 4. I have 4-year-old twins. Many of you have children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews. We can imagine how unbearable it must be to send such tiny little ones to live apart from the care and protection of their families. Dr. Gello doesn't have to imagine. An educational sociologist from Tibet who escaped to Canada in 2021, his own grandnieces were sent away to a boarding preschool in 2016. He witnessed them turning into strangers in their own home, alienation by design. It's one of the most insidious colonial strategies. And it is a clear escalation by China in Tibet as they target every pillar of Tibetan identity for elimination. Together with the Uyghur genocide, the fall of Hong Kong, the threats against Taiwan, many are asking, how do we get here? How did it get this bad? We've arrived at this moment of truth with China, not because Chinese leaders have changed. They are exactly who they've always been: unelected, unaccountable, illegitimate. This is the heart of the problem. This is what must be addressed. This is the core issue at hand. Human rights, democracy, and freedom must be at the center of the solutions and strategies sought by the foreign policy community and our leaders. How do we know this? Or how do we do this? People often assume this has to mean violence or military intervention, but that's not it either. The answer lies with the people and those who've already spoken up and risked everything for these values. It lies with Tibetans, Uyghurs, Southern Mongolians, Hong Kongers, and the Chinese citizens themselves, the ones we saw in Tiananmen Square and during the White Paper Revolution. World leaders need to stand with them more directly, clearly, and boldly, more as a central part of the plan, and they need to focus on making them stronger and bolstering their confidence and helping them succeed. They need to focus less on Xi Jinping and his cronies and trying not to upset them or just to build relations using the same failed approaches of the past. We need to think beyond them. As Dr. Gello says, change is coming, whether we're ready or not, and we need to be ready. He also says this award is a good omen. In Tibetan, we say, Temde Sangbo. As we continue, Tibetans continue our journey of resistance towards the triumph of democracy, human rights, and freedom in Tibet. Thank you.
Welcome to the stage, Representative Joaquin Castro.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Congressman Joaquin Castro, and it's my distinct honor to serve on the Board of Directors for the National Endowment for Democracy. And I want to say thank you to Ken Wallach, who's done a great job leading the board, and also to Damon Wilson. And the incredible staff of NED, and of course all the folks who made it possible for us to convene and recognize these honorees tonight. For decades, even as our nation became more polarized politically, Congress has maintained steadfast bipartisan support for the people of Tibet. Just yesterday, I joined my colleagues in the House of Representatives to pass bipartisan legislation, the Resolve Tibet Act, that President Biden will soon sign into law, strengthening America's commitment to Tibet and reiterating our dedication to its future. As you know, the Tibetan people have a long and proud history, deeply rooted to the historical lands of Tibet. Ever since China's invasion of Tibet in 1950, the Tibetan people have struggled to maintain their culture, religion, and autonomy in the face of an escalating pattern of repression by Chinese authorities. In recent years, despite an alarming rise in forced population transfers and other crimes against the Tibetan people, Tibet's leaders, particularly those in the Tibetan government in exile, have done remarkable work to keep hope alive among their countrymen. In 2021, the election of Sviatlana Tsering saw 77% turnout, a number that, quite honestly, we're jealous of here in the United States. It was the highest turnout in the history of the government in exile and a powerful sign of the yearning for democracy within Tibet. Since taking office, Sviatlana Tsering has worked to counter Chinese influence and mobilize Tibet's allies to speak up against the suppression of cultural identity within Tibet. In recognition of those efforts, it's my honor to present the 2024 Democracy Service Medal to Sviatlana Penpa Tsering on behalf of the National Endowment for Democracy. Sviatlana Tsering, please join us on stage.
Sviatlana Penpa Tsering is the second democratically elected head of the Central Tibetan Administration. He has dedicated his life to fighting for the rights of the Tibetan people and safeguarding the culture of Tibet as a civil society leader and speaker of the Tibetan Parliament in exile. Since his election as Sviatlana in 2021, he has worked to strengthen the CTA's governance, advocated for the Tibetan people with world leaders, and raised concerns about policies restricting Tibetans' rights and culture. He has also worked tirelessly to secure the release of Tibetan political prisoners and pursue dialogue with the Chinese government. Sviatlana Penpa Tsering represents the aspirations of the Tibetan democracy movement, which serves as an inspiration for oppressed peoples everywhere who are seeking freedom and dignity.
Excellencies, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, I can see Speaker Pelosi has arrived here already. I want to thank the NED board members, past leader Carl Gershman, who has worked very closely with the Tibetans for many years in his 30+ years of career here at NED, and the present leader, Damon Wilson, and his team for honoring us with this service medal. My name is Penpa, as you must have heard. Penpa is a very simple name in Tibetan. It's just P-E-N plus P-A, means Saturday, because I know I was born on a Saturday. I don't know the year, I don't know the month, because those days there were no records in the exile community. So I also want to congratulate all the honorees that the NED honored tonight, and over the years they have been honoring. I am a very ordinary person. I just try to follow His Holiness' wisdom. Whatever we have today, we owe it to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He is the architect, he is the spirit behind everything that we are now or what we have today. I personally have not contributed as much as you would have hoped I had. It's just 30 years of my service for the Tibetan people, and this award is for the people I serve, for the Tibetan people, for the Central Tibetan Administration. I just want to inform you that perhaps we are the only government in exile with a fully functional democratic polity. Those of you who have been to Dharamsala have seen, witnessed the institutions that we have, our cabinet, our Supreme Justice Commission, the Parliament, and the 3 autonomous bodies of Election Commission, Auditor General's Office, and Public Service Commission. We have a cabinet with 7 ministries in India, and it's all thanks to the Indian government and the support that we receive from the US government. The situation inside Tibet, as you have seen from Tibet Action Institute's activities, points towards cultural genocide inside Tibet. Because China, when the whole world is moving towards multiculturalism, China is the only country that's moving towards uniculturalism at the expense of identities of all the nationalities inside China, whether it's the Mongols or the Uyghurs or the Tibetans. Our Hong Kong friends are also here. Taiwan is also suffering because of China. So what is going on inside Tibet and what Tibet Action Institute has reported is one part of what is happening inside Tibet, the colonial-style boarding schools. There are many, many other issues. What you take it for granted in the United States and other countries in the free world does not exist in Tibet. You just take a picture of His Holiness Dalai Lama and you go to jail for 3 years, at least. So that is the level of control and restriction that's happening inside Tibet. And I have been traveling around the world, telling the story of Tibet, what is happening inside Tibet. And I also tell the international community that if you repeat the statement that Tibet is part of PRC, you're going against international law, because whether it's happening to Ukraine today or whether it happened to Tibet 70 years ago, it was the same international law. And I also tell countries that on the one hand, they say Tibet is part of PRC, and on the other hand, they say, we support negotiations between Representative His Holiness Dalai Lama and the Chinese government. And I tell them, you are removing the very ground for negotiations. When every country admits that Tibet is part of PRC, then where is the reason for China to come and talk to us? Then I also ask governments, why do you think China is asking other countries to say Tibet, only Tibet is part of PRC? That is because the Chinese government knows that they have no legitimacy of their rule in Tibet. And that is why they are trying to seek that legitimacy from the international community. So I also want to take this opportunity to thank our friends in the Congress, particularly led by Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, and Honorable Representative Castro also mentioned about the Tibet Resolve Act, which is meant to promote negotiation and resolve the Sino-Tibet conflict. And this is a bipartisan bill, bicameral, and this was approved, just yesterday it got approved in the House through the suspension of rules to reconcile the wordings between the Senate and the House, and hopefully it'll go to the President's office very soon. And I also want to inform you that we have a congressional delegation coming to Dharamsala, led by Michael McCall, chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and Representative Meeks, minority leader in the Senate House Foreign Affairs Committee, and Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi will also be joining this delegation, and they are planning to leave tomorrow. So I have to be back in Dharamsala before they reach Dharamsala. In fact, I came this morning, so I'm still a little bit groggy. But I really appreciate this opportunity to be here and to speak about Tibet and the Tibet Action Institute and the role that they have played. Now, all we can say is we tell countries, please don't look at us only from the perspective of being a victim of communism. Nobody wants anarchy in China. But at the same time, we have to make China accountable for what they are doing. China is a threat not only to the nationalities within China, like Tibetans, Uyghurs, and Mongols, but it's a threat to the whole world. Because they are not talking only about repression, not imposing repression inside Tibet, but they want to export their system of governance in the name of global security initiative, global economic initiative, global civilizational initiative. So these are a real danger and threat to the free world, and we all need to work together to make China accountable. We are born in this world as a free person. All human beings are born to be free, not to be enslaved physically or mentally. And this is exactly what is happening inside Tibet, and we need your support more than ever before. And thank you again for honoring us with this award. And I received this very humbly on behalf of all the Tibetans inside Tibet and outside Tibet, and on behalf of all my colleagues who are in Dharamsala, because democracy doesn't happen because of one person. It happens because of everybody. Thank you very much.
And now, a video introducing the next awardee.
Speaker Nancy Pelosi has been a pillar of support for democracy, demonstrating time and again her commitment to human rights and freedom. As the first woman elected Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, she is a trailblazer for women in politics and a champion of equality. Speaker Pelosi has stood by embattled advocates fighting against authoritarianism and persecution around the world. She honored those who died for democracy in Tiananmen Square and has spoken out against the Chinese Communist Party's treatment of Uyghurs, Tibetans, and Hong Kongers. She has been a steadfast supporter of democratic allies, including Taiwan and Ukraine. Because of her distinguished leadership, Speaker Pelosi is recognized around the world as a fierce champion for freedom and human rights for all.
Welcome back, Democracy Service Award Medal recipient, Penpa Tsering.
Back here again. This is really an honor for me personally to be honoring Speaker Pelosi on behalf of National Endowment for Democracy. She is a remarkable lady. I am sure everybody agrees with that. And she doesn't need any introduction, particularly from a person like me. So from the time since I met her, I really appreciate her leadership and her friendship with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. When I was appointed here as the representative of His Holiness in Washington, D.C., we organized a Cordell delegation to Dharamsala led by Speaker Pelosi, and the friendship between His Holiness and Speaker Pelosi has been tremendous. When she visited Dharamsala, His Holiness was there to take her around the temples and, introduce her to all the deities in the temples. The friendship that you enjoyed with His Holiness, and now she's going to meet His Holiness on 19th again. And this will be another good opportunity for strengthening our relationship with the United States, along with other members of Congress who will be visiting. Speaker Pelosi has not only been a friend of Tibet, but she is a friend of all the oppressed people. If I have to recall Sviatlana's remark, Speaker Pelosi makes dictators jittery. That's what she said. So I think whether we accept it or not, between China and the rest of the world, it is a fight between democracy and authoritarianism. And Speaker Pelosi have always stood up against authoritarianism and in favor of oppressed people. So may I have the pleasure of inviting Speaker Pelosi to receive this honor.
What a beautiful medal. How wonderful to receive it by you. Saturday. I call you Tsikhanouskaya. His reputation is so magnificent, so values-based, so strategic in his thinking, so respectful of the charge that he has, so clearly connected to His Holiness, and so clearly connected to Tibetans, both in Tibet and throughout the rest of the world. Thank you for your tremendous leadership. It's an honor. It's an honor to receive this award from you on the same evening when you are receiving the same award. Now, I want to thank Carl Gershwin. How many years do we go back, Carl? Oh my gosh, since the start. He has, Yeah. We were in grade school, but anyway. and then Damon Wilson, thank you for your leadership now, and Ken Wallach for your ongoing leadership of the NED. It's such a remarkable organization, and how proud many of us have to have this statue in our offices when this was the award. Thomas Marsh, you're showing us how he planned it and then made it, and there it is, a model of what was in Tiananmen Square. Tiananmen Square, which just within the past week, this month, we observed the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. Approximately the 32nd or 33rd anniversary of our unfurling a banner in Tiananmen Square in honor of those who gave their lives or freedom for democracy in China. It's been a long time, and we have much more to do. NED has been about democracy in China, but about democracy throughout the world. And it's an honor to be receiving this award with all of the awardees tonight. I had the privilege of hearing Sviatlana testify today before a congressional committee, the pleasure to meet with her yesterday, the pride to wear the pan of Belarus and freedom, along with Ukraine and freedom, so that people know what is happening there, know about her tremendous courage, realize how long her husband has been incommunicado from their family, proud of Lithuania for being a place, a domicile for her, and eager for us to organize Belarusians in diaspora in the United States, hopefully, so there are many, to have an impact on our policy. The tragedy of Belarus because of the cruelty and oppression of Russia. So for these and other reasons, and you know better, I wouldn't do justice to all of the awardees to talk about them, but I'm so glad that my colleague, Congressman Castro, is on the board of the NED. He brings a whole fresh look to it all, and he has a perspective on the world. So I thought, what would I say to you that could be adequate for this award? It's so commanding, but, oh, he's not there anymore. Hopefully he's sitting down. Okay. So when you talked about my friendship with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, I was thinking I would tell you this story. So I visited His Holiness the Dalai Lama a number of times in Dharamsala. And one time when we were there, it was terrible. It was 2008 in March, right after the crackdown in Tibet by the Chinese. Horrible. And there were people coming, I don't know if they came over the mountain or around the pass or whatever, but coming to Dharamsala to tell His Holiness what was happening there. They were kissing the hem of his garb. They were crying. It was terrible. He had an interpreter. I could understand what was happening. It was horrible. intolerable, terrible. He told the other members to go have the tour, because I had been there before, but that many of the members on our bipartisan, it's always been bipartisan trip, they would do that while I would listen to these stories. Now, I tell you this because following their tour and our conversation, we went outside and had our big presentation, Democrats and Republicans, who was going to help with visas and who was going to help with appropriation, who was going to help with ways and means, whatever we needed there, whatever, all these kinds of things to help Tibetans and in terms of policy, in terms of resources, in terms of visas. So in any event, we go then to lunch, and he has invited a large number, His Holiness, has invited a large number of lamas. They were young, maybe 100 lamas for lunch. Everybody makes their presentation. So when it was my turn, I told them what I had just experienced, that these people were telling His Holiness these horrible things that were going on in Tibet. And then I said what I always say. Carl's heard me say this every year for 40 years probably, or more than once in 1 year. If we do not speak out against human rights in China because of economic reasons, we lose all moral authority to speak about human rights any place in the world. So I say that. The reason I tell you this story is what happens next. His Holiness gets up again in front of the group, thanks me for my remarks, and says to the lamas, "Let us all now pray for Nancy so that we can rid her of her negative attitudes." But that's how he was, and that's how he is, and that's why he commands such respect in the world. Because as you had said, I think you want to negotiate with the Chinese government. He's always talking about praying for the government. He says he prays for the government of China and the rest. And we all pray that they open their hearts to goodness and the rest. But he prays for them. And that's why he wanted to rid me of my negative attitudes, even after I heard these stories coming across the red. But in any case, we really have to salute the National Endowment for Democracy for what they have done over the years to shine a bright light on injustice, a bright light on injustice. I said today at the hearing, one of the cruelest things that oppressors do is to tell the people they have imprisoned that nobody even knows they're there anymore, so why don't they just give it up because they are forgotten. But we do not believe that, we do not espouse it, and our members of Congress are always in a bipartisan way, whether on the floor of the House or to a head of state or on a visit to a country, giving letters with the names, speaking out so that they know they are remembered and their oppressors know that they are remembered. I'll just tell you this one story about sheep. When he came to the United States, not last November in San Francisco, but when he came, it was like 6-7 years ago, when he was new president of China. I'm just trying to think of the year, but in any event, we had a leadership meeting with him. And Dianne Feinstein, my dear friend from San Francisco, our senator, who she and her husband, Richard Blum, were very big supporters and advocates for freedom, democracy in Tibet. She and I, in the conversation, said we want to bring up the subject of Tibet and made our case about it. To which he said, "Oh, you don't even know what's going on. You don't know what's going on. We've done so many good things in Tibet. You should just go and see for yourself, because you'll be so surprised. It's so different from what you described. To which I said, oh, well, I've been trying to get a visa to go to Tibet for 25 years. I take this as a visa that you are offering by telling us to go see for ourselves. I don't know if Jim McGovern is here or was here. He's has floor duty, and the Rules Committee is always working. He will be on our trip next week. But he was with us when we went to Tibet. We brought a wonderful delegation. We saw the room where Dalai Lama grew up, and all the palace, of course, but the room that was his personal room. Oh, it was just beautiful, that. But we saw ridiculousness. I mean, we were surrounded by security the whole time, cameras, all the rest. And the one thing, they said, we're going to take you to see a typical Tibetan family, and you see how happy they are. So we go to the family, we go in the place. Now, how many homes have you been in where you walk in the living room is a gigantic picture of President Xi? Or any president, a big picture in the living room. And the people told us how happy they were, and here are pictures of their grandchildren, and they were in school, and their daughter would be home from work soon, and life was beautiful. So we're listening to this suspiciously, and then the daughter came home, and we said to her, oh, we've seen the pictures of your children. When will they be home from school? She said, children? I don't have any children. So we went to Beijing. We went to see President Xi, and Jim McGovern said to President Xi, yes, we went to see your Potemkin village of Tibet. But that's what they're selling. He said, oh, we gilded the roof of the temple. And I said to them, that's interesting. We'd rather know what's going into the minds of the children and their values, their language, their culture, again, their religion, rather than what you're doing to the roof of the temple. So we have serious misrepresentations about what's going on in these places. You all are very completely knowledgeable about what's happening in different parts of the world, starting with Ukraine a couple of years ago, now what's happening in the Middle East. But as I look at this room and all of you, I'm so impressed because I see people who care, who know, who are making a difference. Each and every one of you know how special you are. Champions for democracy. Champions for democracy. So I'll just give you a quote from Baltimore, where I'm from, although I represent San Francisco. Been there over 50 years. That's where my husband is from. And by the way, he's doing fine. Thank you so much for so many asking. Coming along. In Baltimore, the national anthem was written. And with the national anthem, in it, it says, proof through the night that our flag was still there. To me, that is a description of the situation we're in right now. We're in the night of misrepresentations and just threats to democracy all over the world, including here. And we have to work very hard in a unifying way, in a patriotic way, in a respectful way of all of the people in order to prove through the night that our flag is still there. And as we proclaim, declare, pledge each official day with liberty and justice for all in our country and beyond. So I thank you so much for this wonderful honor. You know how wonderful the government in exile is under Saturday's leadership here. And I just want to thank you all again for this wonderful medal, which I will display with great pride in my Capitol office. Tache delay.
welcome to the stage Representative Steve Cohen.
Good evening. It's indeed an honor to be with all of you. You're the good guys. Sometimes when I'm in Congress, I'm not with all the good guys. But you are, and it's my honor to recognize two of the great people in the world who have contributed to democracy and the hope of a free and democratic Russia. Valeria Kara-Murza and his bride, Evgenia. Vladimir and Evgenia add to the distinguished alumni who have received this award, from John McCain to Madeleine Albright to the Dalai Lama and those others who have received the award today. Vladimir's life has been a testament to struggle, to sacrifice, and to courage. And he shared that with Evgenia, who has learned from him and taken up his cause. As most of you know, Vladimir is imprisoned in Russia. He's been sentenced to 25 years, and he's been in solitary confinement for the last 260-something days. I got to know him through my work on the Helsinki Commission, and we got to be friends, and we talked about Russia, and we talked about freedom, and we talked about democracy. He came to me one day, and he said, I think there should be a special representative of the OSCE on political prisoners. What do you think? I said, well, I think that's a good idea. And he said, no, I think it ought to be you. And I think you ought to talk to the president of the OSCE about your appointment. Well, I thanked him for that. It was an honor, and I called her, and she was receptive to the idea of having a special representative, and I guess eventually she was receptive to the idea of me being that special representative, because I am. But I thought about it later, and I knew Vladimir knew that in his return to Russia, he would be a political prisoner. And I carry out my responsibility to tell the world about Vladimir Kara-Murza and what Russia has done to his life and what they've done to the lives of so many Russians. Vladimir twice had been poisoned. He was Boris Nemtsov's right hand and worked as a correspondent with the Washington Post and writing articles about Russia. Worked with Bill Browder on the Magnitsky laws to try to see that there were sanctions against the folks that oppressed people in Russia, particularly Magnitsky. And he'd twice been poisoned and almost killed on each occasion by Russian operatives. And when I heard he was going to go back to Russia, I said, Vladimir, please don't go. You can't do that. He said, I must go because I'm a Russian politician and I want to see a free and democratic Russia, and I can't do it from without. I must be within. I must be with my people. I asked Evgenia about it. I said, how did you try to stop him? She said, no, I know my husband. I know what he was going to do. And Khodorkovsky did the same thing. There was no stopping Vladimir. So when he went back to Russia, he was arrested for having spoken at a university in Arizona, not about the special military operation, but about the war in Ukraine. And that's an unforgivable sin, to recognize it as a war, not a special military operation. And he went back, and the police came one day, and they charged him with some ridiculous offense, and they charged him, and they charged him, and they charged him, and so he's now looking at 25 years. He is the face of Russian political courage that has gone for many, many years of great people who have stood up to repression to try to get freedom and democracy for the Russian state. He and Evgenia deserve this award because they have stood up against the most imposing forces, Vladimir Putin, who is responsible for the kidnapping of so many Ukrainian children and the genocide in Ukraine. He has met all of the criteria for a genocide, and he has made Russia a terrorist country, and we need to recognize that. So, as Evgenia has taken up the cause to be the lead advocate for political prisoners of Putin's regime, The Russian Human Rights Organization Memorial estimates there are 700 political prisoners. She's been phenomenal at continuing Vladimir's important work. I greatly admire her bravery and strength as well as his. I congratulate each of them tonight, and we will continue to call for Vladimir's release and continue to support their courageous work, and we recognize them with this award this evening. And I hope you'll do this. Vladimir told me something else. He said, the worst thing that can happen to a political prisoner is to be forgotten. So please, you all have voices, strong voices, social media, and other ways to get messages out. Let the world know about the efforts of Vladimir Kara-Murza, his bravery, his courage, and what he's doing to stand up for democracy in Russia and around the world. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Russian opposition leader Vladimir Kara-Murza has spent his life demanding democratic reforms in Russia. After condemning Russia's war in Ukraine and lobbying for Western sanctions, Kara-Murza was arrested and sentenced to 25 years in maximum security prison for treason and other charges. But he continues to speak up for a better future for Russia from behind bars. His columns on Russian politics and society, written while in prison and at great personal risk, recently won the Pulitzer Prize. Since her husband's imprisonment, Evgenia Kara-Murza has traveled the world not only advocating for his release, but also for the release of more than 700 political prisoners in Russia as the advocacy director of Free Russia Foundation. A formidable team, the Kara-Murzas have become stewards of their people's hope for freedom.
President Wilson, Chairman Wallach, Founding President Gershman, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, dear friends, it's truly an honor and a privilege for me to be here tonight and to be recognized among such amazing awardees tonight. And I want to say, I want to thank Congressman Cohen for his kind words, for his kind introduction, also for his leadership in defending human rights and democracy around the world. And I want to say a special thank you to President Tsikhanouskaya for her support and solidarity. Sviatlana, I know that we will win. I know that your husband and mine are going to come back to us because we are not going to stop. We're not going to give up the fight. We're going to continue fighting these atrocities of human beings, Lukashenko and Putin. We will fight and we will not stop. And this is why I know that democracy and freedom will win. On February 24th, 2022, I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of the text alert message on my phone. The message was from Vladimir, who was in Moscow, and it said only 2 words: it started. I didn't need to ask him what this was about. I knew. The next several weeks were kind of hazy. I remember reading the news in horror, crying, reading the news again. I remember going through my daily routine of working, taking care of the kids, running errands, going to protests, all in a sort of stupor. I remember feeling enraged, ashamed, helpless and unable to focus all at the same time. It felt as if I could physically feel the pain and suffering of families being torn apart, of entire Ukrainian cities being wiped off the face of the earth. Every time I looked at my children, I could see the faces of Ukrainian kids murdered, killed by Russian bombs. And then on April 11th, I got a call from my husband's lawyer in Moscow, who said that he couldn't reach Vladimir and that his locator placed Vladimir in one of Moscow's pretrial detention centers. And again, I didn't need to ask him what was happening. I knew. But I also knew what Vladimir needed me to do. I also knew that the best way I could help him was by continuing his work. So I took a deep breath in, let it out, dried my tears, packed my bags, and have since pretty much been living on a plane. Eleanor Roosevelt said that a woman is like a tea bag. You can't tell how strong she is until you put her in hot water. I don't know how strong I am. I believe that every person has a limit. I just haven't reached mine yet. And I certainly don't know what I'm doing half the time. But I am incredibly lucky to be surrounded by friends and colleagues from the Free Russia Foundation, Memorial, OVD-Info, the Feminist Anti-War Resistance, the Go by the Force Project, the ARC Project, the Anti-War Committee, the Anti-Corruption Foundation, and many other civil society groups and organizations, all fighting the same fight, all wanting to bring Vladimir Putin to the ICC. And I am deeply, beyond humbled to receive the Democracy Service Medal from the National Endowment for Democracy. And I would like to dedicate it to my Russian colleagues whose bravery, resilience, and commitment, despite the horrendous circumstances, have been a source of inspiration to me. As Eleanor Roosevelt put it, I think you guessed by now that she's kind of a hero of mine. And I quote, "We do not have to become heroes overnight, just a step at a time, meeting each thing that comes up, seeing it as not as dreadful as it appears, discovering that we have the strength to stare it down." End of quote. And I would also like to dedicate this medal to my incredible husband, the love of my life, the father of my children, the source of whatever strength I still have left. And also my partner in crime, what with him labeled a foreign agent and a traitor, and me working for an undesirable organization. The man of integrity and honor, whom I'm so incredibly lucky to be sharing my life with. And because I'm here tonight to receive this medal, also on behalf of Vladimir, Vladimir sent something for me to read to you. So as always, it is my pleasure and privilege to share Vladimir's voice and his vision with you. President Wilson, Chairman Wallach, Founding President Gershman, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. I am deeply humbled to be presented with the Democracy Service Medal from the National Endowment for Democracy, an organization that has for more than 4 decades carried the message of hope, freedom, and human dignity to the furthest and most repressed corners of the world, and that, today as ever, remains faithful to the conviction expressed by President Reagan in his Westminster address that, and I quote, "Freedom is not the sole prerogative of the lucky few, but the inalienable and universal right of all human beings," end of quote. 2024 is a year of big anniversaries, some tragic, like the massacre on Tiananmen Square, some happy, like the fall of the Berlin Wall. In Russia, this year marks 25 years since Vladimir Putin came to power. A whole generation of Russians has grown up without knowing any other reality. And in the free world, a whole generation has grown up thinking that that is what Russia is, a despotic and belligerent power that wants to behave in the 21st century by 17th century rules, a country that represses its own people and invades its neighbors. But that's only half of the story. Because despite a quarter century of Putinism, there is a different vision of Russia, more hopeful, more peaceful, more democratic. And that vision lives in the tens of thousands of Russians who have protested against Putin's war in Ukraine, who have brought flowers to makeshift memorials for Alexei Navalny all over the country, who have waited in long lines to sign nomination papers for the barred anti-war candidate in this year's so-called presidential election. Many of those who share this vision are now in prison. Today's Russia holds more political prisoners than the Soviet Union did in its later years. And behind these numbers are people of all ages and all walks of life who have refused to stay silent in the face of the atrocities committed by Putin's regime. I have met many of them over the past 2 years. We have shared prison cells, police vans, cramped sleeping wagons, courthouse, prisoner holding cells. And each and every one of them has made me proud of my Russia, the Russia of Boris Nemtsov and Alexei Navalny, the Russia I call home. It is an incredible honor to receive this award, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart, but I view it first and foremost as your recognition of all Russian citizens who are today standing up to the Putin regime, even at the cost of their personal freedom. All those who believe in a peaceful, civilized, and democratic future for Russia. Despite everything, I have no doubt that that future will come. Thank you all so very much.
And now a momentary pause to set the stage for a special tribute to the people of Venezuela. presenting a special tribute to the people of Venezuela, welcome to the stage co-founder and president of the Callas Music and Art School, Saul Vera.
Distinguished Mr. Damon Wilson, President and CEO, National Endowment for Democracy. Distinguished Mr. Kenneth Wallach, Chairman. Distinguished recipients of the Democracy Service Medal and the Democracy Award 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to stand before you tonight at this special event. Today, we have been invited with our music to recognize and celebrate the exceptional contributions of our fellow Venezuelans, to pay a special tribute for the brave people of Venezuela. For over 22 years, the Venezuelan people have shown extraordinary resilience and unwavering courage in our struggle to establish freedom and an internationally recognized democracy. It's a journey marked by perseverance, resilience, hope, but also by the painful price of hundreds of political prisoners, millions fleeing our country, a devastated economy, and the loss of many lives in the pursuit of democracy. Despite the immense challenges, the people of Venezuela have continued to stand up for their rights and demand transparent, internationally observed elections. They have demonstrated that the spirit of democracy cannot be extinguished, no matter how difficult the path. Their determination inspires all of us and underscores the universal value of democracy and human rights. The music we will play tonight is rooted in a rich tradition and carries a powerful message of courage and hope. Our performance includes genres that have been part of our singing and dancing traditions for centuries, showcasing the confluence of Hispanic, indigenous, and African origins that have resonated among Venezuelans since the dawn of our history. Today, you will hear these tunes on the Venezuelan cuatro and the bandola llanera, two emblematic instruments unique to Venezuela and its cultural heritage. The vibrant spirit of freedom and resilience is meant to encourage all of those already involved in this historic struggle and inspire others to join us. As we speak, the struggle for democracy is ongoing in Venezuela. With you, we stand with the people of Venezuela, we the people of Venezuela, and with those around, and with those around the world striving for a better and a freer world. Many thanks for your support, and we hope you enjoy the message of our music. Thank you.
tengo a quien quejarme, yo no tengo a quien quejarme, sino solo a las estrellas. Yo no tengo a quien quejarme, yo no tengo a quien quejarme, sino solo a las estrellas. Pero como están tan altas, pero como están tan altas, no pueden oír mis quejas. Pero como están tan altas, no pueden oír mis quejas.
honor all the Venezuelans in the house tonight. Thank you. Thank you to all our Venezuelan friends. Thank you, everyone. Good night. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.